This is a Dvar Malchut, the royal words, the words of royalty, which were spoken by the Lubavitcher Rebbe. The words of royalty because the Rebbe has all the qualifications for being the king Moshiach. It's the main thing of Moshiach. It's going to educate everybody, and that's what the Rebbe is doing here. And attempting to educate every single Jew about what the importance of being a Jew is. So here we have, this speech was given by the Lubavitcher Rebbe in 92. I have to look at a calendar back there. 1992. In the beginning, either the beginning of 92 or the end of 91. Actually, I should look it up, but I didn't. Okay, we'll do it later. It's not that important. Okay, what is this talking about? This is talking about going out of Egypt. That's what the whole, it's this week's Torah portion is Shemot. It's talking about how the Jewish people became slaves in Egypt, right? And what did we learn last week? That Yosef became the king of Egypt, saved the whole entire world from famine. The whole family came down into Egypt because they were also suffering hunger, like everybody else in the world. And Yosef revealed to them that he is their brother. He's ruling over the whole world. Stay in Egypt until this whole thing blows over, and then you can go back to the land of Israel, and everything's going to be really good. And sure enough, what happens is they go down to Israel, and it's really great for them. And then the king of Egypt dies, or he changes his mind. There are two different opinions, and all of a sudden, the exile sets in, and the Jews are there. They become slaves. All the Jews become slaves almost overnight. And this lasts for 210 years. Terrible, awful slavery. And the Jewish people are crying out to God, and God sends Moses. Moses comes along, and he's the star. He's the star of the whole rest of the Bible. Moses. Moses comes down, Moses, interestingly enough, he's born in the house of Paro. Paro brings him up. Unknowingly, doesn't know that that's who it is. But Moses, in any case, he takes the Jews out. And God talks to him at the burning bush and says, you're going to take the Jews out. And Moses tries to refuse at first, and then he says, okay, I'll do it. And he goes to Paro and says, okay, let the Jews go. And Paro says, what in the world are you talking about? I'm going to let the Jews out. Who let you in here? He says, God, the Lord of the world, the King of the universe. He controls everything. So Paro says, listen, if you can control everything, so let him let the Jews out. What are you asking me for? You want my permission? I'm not giving it. If you're asking my permission, you need my. So it shows that your God is not so powerful. He needs me to agree. So forget it. I'm not agreeing. I'm not going to agree. If anything, your God is agreeing with me. I'm the king of the world, not you guys. And so anyway, subsequently, there are 10 plagues, and the Jews get out with big miracles. But okay, this week's Torah portion only talks about how bad it is, and it gets worse and worse. And God comes to Moses and says, you're going to take the Jewish people out. It's going to be really great. And Moses goes and tells the Jews, you're going to go out of Egypt. It's going to be great. And the Jewish people say, this is wonderful. This is my father, my grandfather told me there was going to be something like this. We're all ready to go out, and things get worse. Things get much worse. And the Jewish people come to Moses and say, tell me, why did you give us this message? We were getting along okay before. We were sort of getting used to being slaves. And now you built up our promise, our hopes, and we're getting beaten more because we're talking about going out. And Moses goes to God and says, God, why are you doing this to this people? Why are you making the Jews suffer? What did they do? What did they do to deserve this? They haven't done anything wrong. I mean, they've been slaves for 4 generations. They were born slaves. They never did any sins. What do you want for them? And that's basically how this week's Torah portion ends. That's how it ends. Okay, so that's talking about how bad it is for the Jews, but we know that there's a happy ending. Not actually, the ending has not really ended yet until Moshiach comes. But at least this, how do you say, the first volume, it comes out okay. Right, the Jewish people get out of Egypt, and they get the Torah, and and then they wander around through the desert. That's going to be later. They get the Torah. That's it. And they build the temple. They build the tabernacle. And they start serving God. Everything's good. In the book of Numbers, it talks about all the different troubles that there were, that the Jews didn't want to go into Israel, and they made a big revolution against Moses. But that's not here. Here to talk about being in Egypt, how bad it is, and getting out of Egypt, how good it is. It does throw in the middle over there the sin with the golden calf, and that they're going to have to wander around for 40 years. But, okay, that's an unfortunate, accident that happened. Let's go. Egypt. Now again, just to remind us, the purpose, the point, the goal of Chassidut is to teach us that everything that is in the Torah is inside of us, and that the purpose of the Torah is to fix the world, the physical world, that the whole entire world should be healthy, should act in a positive, healthy way. And the Jews doing this Torah, and the non-Jews also doing the Torah, the 7 Noahide commandments. That's their that's their obligation in the Torah, the 7 Noahide commandments. Okay, here we go. It says, Al Eila Shemot Bnei Yisrael, the first sentence in this week's Torah portion, it says these are the names of the Jewish people. This book is called Names. That's really the name. It's been given the name Exodus because it talks about the Jews going out of Egypt. But really, in Hebrew, it's called Shemot, names. That's the name of it's called Shemot, names. The book of names. And when it says Eila Shemot Bnei Yisrael, Aboim Mitzrayim, that come to Egypt, Isa Midrash, it says in the Midrash, Al Shem Geulat Yisrael Nizkar Sham. Here it's talking about the going out of Egypt. It says clearly that it's not, but the Midrash says that it is. It says in the Midrash, these are the names of the Jewish people that went into Egypt. And it says Reuven, Shimon, etc. The Midrash says exactly the opposite of what is the simple meaning. The simple meaning is these are the names of the Jews that went into Egypt. And the Midrash says this is talking about the going out of Egypt. Well, Behemshech, and it continues, explains the Midrash how it is that every one of the Jewish people from the 12 tribes is connected to the redemption, going out of Egypt, and not just the redemption from Egypt, but the future redemption going out of all the troubles that's going to be now. And Badrush Beer, this requires a little bit of understanding. Let's move this a little bit. Here we go. Haboy Mitzrayim, those Jews that went into Egypt, Meduber, it's talking about Pashto simply. What Odo you read it Bnei Yisrael, but Galus Mitzrayim, the Jews went in to Egypt. Come super like it's written in the continuation of all these sentences that it says that Jews got worse in Egypt and they became slaves. Rak Lachri Zaman, only after a long time they went out of Egypt. It's not even talked about in our Torah portion. It's not talked about in the poor Torah portion afterwards, the Era. That's the Era talks about the first seven plagues. Ella be'enzo, Parsha V'achrei, but only in the middle of the 3rd chapter, right? Now we're going to read, not this week, we don't read about going out of Egypt, and not next week, but we read in the middle of the Torah reading of the week after next. Ketzad, how the Jews went out of Egypt. If so, how can it say, the Midrash say, that this, when it talks about the names of the Jews going into Egypt, it's not talking about going in, it's talking about going out of Egypt. And it's mentioned here, Shezeh, that this is exactly the opposite of the simple meaning. Midrash Achir, and another Midrash, it says that the Geula Mitzrayim, now what is the Midrash, by the way? Midrash are explanations that were given to the great rabbis by divine inspiration. These are divinely inspired. These are not just people that sat and they had nice ideas like somebody writing a song or something. Even though those people who write songs, it's also by, some sort of spiritual inspiration that they get. But here it's not talking about spiritual inspiration. It's talking about from God, godly inspiration that gives them correct understandings of what the Torah is. And sometimes these correct understandings, there's, 70 different facets of the same topic, and sometimes they appear to be opposite of one another. But nevertheless, it says that they're all the word of God. Elu v'elu dibra Elokim chayim. So learning the words of the rabbis, that's a very essential thing in Judaism, is what is a rabbi, first of all, and the importance of listening to the rabbis, because the Torah, if taken at face value, is up for grabs. It means absolutely nothing. You can explain anything you want to from the Torah. If you don't have the proper interpretation. And the proof of that, of course, is Christianity. That whole religion is just a twisting and improper understanding of the sentences of the Torah. And from that, you can build a whole big thing. So it's very important what the rabbis say. And that's the Midrash. Midrash is the teachings of the rabbis, interpretations of the various rabbis, and the explanations of the rabbis, genuine rabbis of the Torah. Okay. Another place it says that the Geula Mitzrayim, the going out of Egypt, was bishvil, for the sake of a lo shinoi et shemam, because they didn't change their names. Oh, Reuven and Shimon nachtin. It says Reuven and Shimon. They were called Reuven and Shimon when they went in. Reuven and Shimon sulkin. They were called the same names. They didn't change their names when they were in Egypt. According to this, Yesh Lomar, we can say that these are the names of the Jewish people that went into Egypt. Mudgashet, it is stressed. Also, the merit, that in the merit, why the Jews went out of Egypt. Namely, they didn't change their name. If so, according to that's nice. That's a good explanation. That does not contradict at all the simple meaning that they went into Egypt. How you read it, they went down into Egypt. Well, that's a simple meaning. Because here it's talking about hinting only the reason, the names that they went into Egypt with. Good, it's talking about going in. But it's also giving the reason that afterwards, why would they redeem the Jewish people in the course of the exile? Because they didn't change their names. That they go into Egypt. Azai then, these are the names of the Jewish people. Shaloshinu et Shemam, they didn't change their names. Which is not the case. Lafia Midrash, according to the Midrash, Hanal Nimsa comes out. Shalorak bishvil el Shemot bnei Israel. Not just because these are the names of the Jewish people. The redemption came a long time afterwards, namely at 210 years afterwards. But the term is even more. The names themselves were mentioned here because of, and that's the reason for the future redemption. That's a nice explanation. Kolomar, the Elu Shemot, these are the names of the Jewish people that went into Egypt. This refers to redemption, namely that they didn't change the names; they came out with the same names. Shazil, this is okay. This is the name, but this is at first glance a stira lepashtuts. This is also a contradiction to what it says aboy Mitzrayim, that they came down into exile. So, no matter how you want to say it, the names over here that are given are the names of the Jews that went into Egypt. If you want to say that because of that, they didn't change their names, that's how they got out. Okay, but that's not what it says here clearly. It says that these are the names of the Jewish people when they went in. Okay, what's important? We'll see. What is the message from God that the Midrash seems to be making a mistake? Midrash says apparently the opposite of the simple meaning. And of course the Midrash is not wrong, it's right. So what's the point? What's hidden over here? It says clearly, face value, the Torah says these are the names of the Jews that went into Egypt. And the Midrash says no, this is talking about the Jews that were coming out of Egypt. Why say such an apparent contradiction? Why? Also, we have to understand that, okay. Yeterim is even more. Al Shem Geulas Yisrael, that these names of the Jews when they went into Egypt, these names are implying the redemption, going out of Egypt. This includes also not just the going out of Egypt back then, 3,300 years ago. It's talking about going out, the Geula. Geula doesn't say the Geula, the redemption from Egypt. This is talking about the general Geula, the redemption that's coming. Like it says in the Midrash, Ha'amor B'Biur, like it says in the Sheikhos, the connection of Yosef for the Geula. And it says Yosef was one of the names, and explains, and the Midrash explains each one of those names, how it's going to be relevant to the Moshiach taking us out. So it says Yosef is al shem she'atir kodesh baruch hu, that in the future God is going to hosif again. Osef means to repeat. The Goel at Yisrael, and take the Jews out mimalchos harishah, from the evil rulership. Kashem, just like they took them from Egypt. The Kasiv, like it says, Vayom Hahu Yosef Hashem, like it says, and it will be that on that day God will increase again. He'll return to raise up his hand and take the Jews out of Egypt. Where does it say this? In Isaiah. Isaiah, God is going to do it again. That you can attach the going into Egypt and the going out of Egypt with the going out of the exile that we're in now. But this is also attached to the exile that we're in now, and we're going to go out of it also. That came a long time after they left Egypt, right? This is 3,300, what is it, 28, 38 years, something like 34 years after they left Egypt. And then the Holocaust will come much more so after the going into Egypt, which is 210 years before. So if so, let's get this straight. What's going on here? The Rebbe says there's a big message that's here, but it's really concealed because it seems to be that there's a couple mistakes being made over here in the Midrash and etc. The simple meaning is here in our Torah portion, look in the beginning, is listed the names of the 12 tribes going into Egypt. Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda. And they went into Egypt. The Midrash says these are the names of the Jews that went out of Egypt. One contradiction. Another contradiction says these are the names of the Jews that are going to go out in the future redemption, which is now 3,300 years after they left Egypt, 3,500 years after they went into Egypt. In another way, what's the connection of the Jews going into Egypt, the descent of Jacob and all of his sons, and the 17 years that Jacob, the 17 years that he set in peace, and then afterwards that Pharaoh forgot all of this, and the Egyptians and Pharaoh, they said, let's make trouble for the Jews, and etc. What's all this got to do with the future redemption? But Nosaf, I'll say, in addition to this, Yeshlav, we can understand, like it's relevant to everything in the Torah, and the Torah is a Horah, teaching. What can we learn from all this? The 1,000 years, right? The 3,000 years that we've been in exile, and we're going to go out of exile. What does this mean to us? What are we supposed to do? Let's say there is a connection, but that's God's business. It's not our business. So we learn about it. It says, no, this obviously is implying we have to do something. We have to adopt, in addition to just adopting a different attitude, that the situation that we're in now is just temporary. We're going to go out just like the Jews left Egypt. But we have to do something in order to bring about this future redemption. Now, it's very interesting. Now in the world, especially in America, so there's this big, huge wave of amazing, revealed, proud anti-Semitism going on. That the people are just calling for the destruction of the Jews. People that, a week ago, a month ago, were your best friends. All of a sudden, they're in the street saying, we got to kill all the Jews, and then no more Jews in America, in the USA. Who would ever dream of such a thing like that? Right? And they're saying the Nazis weren't so bad, they killed them. On the other hand, they're saying the Jews, they are the Nazis. It's just the whole thing is going crazy. So what do people want? What do people generally want? Listen, let's just calm this whole business down. There shouldn't be anti-Semitism, like in Israel. Let's have, what do you call it? Dukium. We'll live together. We'll live together. We'll be in peace. That's what we want. That's what we want. We just want to be like everybody else. And we'll live in peace, and that the non-Jews should just leave us alone, and we can, study whatever we want to in Harvard, and that's it. Just let us go. Right? Says the Rebbe, no, that's not the way it works. Doesn't work that way. That's the way it was in Egypt for a while. The Jews were in Egypt, and the Jews were very beneficial to Egypt. They did, And eventually Egypt said, enough of this. Let's get the Jews. The Egyptians didn't want to kill all the Jews. They wanted to use them as slaves. Which maybe I think that's the goal of the Muslims also. If the Jews were servants, like the Jews were in all of the Islamic countries, as long as the Jews were they were number two, that was okay. What's the goal? That we should be equal. Just that we shouldn't have any problems. Says the Rebbe, it's never going to happen. It can't happen. The Jews are not equal to everybody else. The Jews are God's chosen people, and we're supposed to teach everyone in the world how they're supposed to be fulfilling their obligation to their Creator. That's our job. Not that we're better than them, we're superior to them, but we're their teachers. That's who we're supposed to be. And that aspect, the teacher is supposed to be similar to, what are we supposed to teach them? Oh, that's the future redemption. The future redemption is that the Jewish people, every Jew will have what to teach the non-Jews. Teaching the whole world that God is creating us, teaching the whole world that God has a plan. We have responsibility to God. Right? That's the main education. And when that happens, then big changes are going to happen in the world. Right? There won't be so much depression and aggression and frustration and anxiety and lust and things like that. There won't be in the world. Okay, but what has this got to do with the names of the Jewish people when they went into Egypt? What's it got? So we're going to see. Yesh Lomer, we can say the main explanation is like this. Calling it a boy in Mitzrayim, excuse me, it just the whole thing of going into Egypt is going into Egypt, going into the exile. The whole reason for it, the whole general topic is Lamitato Geulat Yisrael, the redemption and the freeing of the Jewish people. V'zeh shebeintayim, and that which in the meantime, in between the Jews going into Egypt and the future redemption, the fact that there happens to be a big descent, this is only external. Of all the penimius, but inside, how you read a gufa, this whole descent, Lorak Bishvil, is not only for the sake of going out of Egypt, but even more. This is a portion, chelik mi'aliyah va'agula atzmo. It's part of the redemption itself. Until aliyah de geula mitit v'shleimat, the true redemption that's going to be in the future. So let's take terrible examples now in our life. The Holocaust. The Holocaust, there's no explanation of the Holocaust. I mean, the Holocaust was just, what happened now in Israel. The Hamas killed these 1,500 people in the most horrific ways. The Holocaust was basically that same thing for 5 years. The worst type of death, the worst type of suffering, prolonged suffering, terrible, awful. How can you possibly say that was a good thing? The Jews that went through it, right? The Jews went through. They were affected. The brains were scrambled. Somehow or other, this is a good thing. Somehow or other, this is part of the process of the Geula. Who would dare to have the chutzpah to say such a ridiculous thing as this? That the Holocaust was good. I can explain it. It's no problem, right? There's people that say because the bad guys, they were the bad, and so they deserved it. This is ridiculous. I heard people say that about this thing now also. They were bad guys. They weren't keeping the shop. No, it's not so. I mean, the Jews were killed in the Holocaust because they're Jews, because they were holy, and the Nazis were simply evil devils. They were worshipers of death. I mean, they killed, in addition to the Jews, they killed another 40 million people, something like that, all over the world. So it wasn't. How can anybody possibly say that this was a good thing? How can it? Says the Rebbe, that's the whole entire point. Everything that happens in the descent of the Jewish people, the bad things that happen to the Jewish people, these are parts and necessary ingredients for the elevation. Mishum Kach, because of this, Omer Midrash that says, Elu Shemot, these are the names of the Jewish people that went into Egypt. This going into Egypt is talking about the going out of Egypt. The intention is the future redemption that's going to come. How is it that going into Egypt is a necessary and an integral part of this beautiful, amazing. I mean, how is the future redemption going to possibly explain all the troubles of the Jewish people? The Rebbe pointed it out. We talked about this before, that in many ways the destruction of the first and the second temple was much worse than the Holocaust. The Holocaust only affected like 1/3 of the Jews. The destruction of the first and second temples affected all of the Jews, and it could be that a bigger percentage of the Jews were killed. But psychologically, for sure, the effect was much more disastrous in the destruction of the temples. Okay, that doesn't make us feel any better. Exactly the opposite. What could possibly happen that's going to be so incredibly good that it's going to explain why these terrible things were a desirous and a necessary step to this good? What's happening? Right? And it's like someone coming up to you in the street and spitting in your face and slapping you on the face, knocking you down on the ground and kicking you. And then afterwards you get up and he says, now I'm going to give you $1 billion, and to all of your family, everyone in your family, I'm going to give another $1 billion because I slapped you and I hit you. Said, okay, it was worthwhile. Let's see if it really happens. It did happen. Okay, now I couldn't tell you about it. But that's why, I can understand a couple $1 billion, that's okay, and I can give charity, I can help people, I can get my whole family, everybody, okay. So that's hurt. It doesn't make much sense, but, it was worthwhile. And getting hit in the face and then spit on, and it's a terrible thing, but getting a couple $1 billion is incomparably good. What could possibly happen? What type of good can there be that will make it worthwhile all the trouble that when Jewish people went through, the destruction? What it'll be? So it's going to be something that's really going to be amazing in this physical world. Our whole appreciation of what God is and how good God is will totally be open. It'll change. We'll be receptive. Even since the Kol Inyanim, the boy Mitzrayim, the Geula Mitzrayim, Nimshach has come down afterwards. Even now, Kol Malchut, it says like all of the kingship, all the rulers that ruled over us are called over and called by the name of Egypt. All the exiles that we've been in. Therefore, we mention going out of Egypt every day, every single generation. A person is obligated to treat himself, and the Alter Rebbe says in every day, a person obligated to treat himself, think that you're going out of Egypt. So namely what the going out of my misconceptions that I had yesterday, trying to come to a better appreciation of God, we can learn from this that also in our exile, we have to draw the redemption of the Jewish people, the Geula Mitit V'Shlema. We can actually do it and make it happen now. How is it going to happen? We're going to find out, God willing. Here we go. We'll do one more paragraph. The Yuvan said we can understand this by explaining the last Mishnah in the first chapter of the Mishnayot of Brachot. Mishnah, if you ever learned Mishnah Brachot, She'omrim, that they say also in the Haggadah of Passover. We just had this in the Torah Or. Omer Rebbe Elazar ben Azariah said, Hare ani kaben shivim shana, I am 70 years old. Like 70 years old. V'lo zechiti, and I did not merit shetei omar, that should be said, going out of Egypt in the nighttime, until shedorsha ben Zoma. Until Ben Zoma said it. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, he became the head of the Sanhedrin. It's a big, long story. But he became the head of the Sanhedrin. He's only 17, 18 years old. He became the head of Sanhedrin. And he said, I am like someone who's 70 years old, because he said he had all the merits of Shmuel, prophet Shmuel. He was a reincarnation of the prophet Samuel. And Samuel lived to 52 years, and he had those 52 years added on to his 18 years. So he said, I am like 70 years old, and I've been trying to convince everybody that you should say the third chapter of Shema, which talks about going out of Egypt, even when it's nighttime, because the third chapter of Shema has the commandment of tzitzis in it. We don't put tzitzis on in the nighttime. So the other rabbis were saying you shouldn't say it in the nighttime. And came Ben Zoma, and Ben Zoma was one of the three that went with Rabbi Akiva into the secrets of the Torah. So it says, Laman tizkor et yom tzitcha meretz Yisrael, that you should remember the days of going out of Egypt. Call Yemei Chayecha. I'm sorry, you should remember the day of going out of Egypt, all the days of your life. Days of your life, that's the days. Call Yemei, all the days of your life, that means even the nighttime. And the Chachamim say the days of your life is talking about this world. All the days of your life is talking about not just in the nighttime, but also in the days of the Moshiach. Even in the days of the Moshiach, you have to remember going out of Egypt. Rashi explains, Ben Shivim Shana, he says, Ben Zoma said, I looked like I was an old man, but I wasn't really old. That came upon me, oldest, I appeared to be old the day that Rabbi Gamliel was evicted from being the head of the Sanhedrin. And they picked Rabbi Elazar Razar, the Nasi, like we're going to learn later, and he was only 18 years old, and they didn't want to pick him because he didn't look old enough, so suddenly they jumped on him, and he looked like an old man, looked like he was 70 years old. And that day, Ben Zoma learned this sentence. Okay, it says the Rebbe, it's sort of we have to understand what is the connection to this, to Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, he was the one that said that we should talk about going out of Egypt even in the nighttime. In the nighttime, Hashaykhu says that, and the rabbi said we should say it even in the days of the Mashiach. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, the connection to this is like this. His name, Elazar ben Azariah, this hints at a very deep thing. Jewish people should say the third chapter of the Tanya talks about going out of Egypt, even in the nighttime, even in the nighttime of exile. Don't forget that we're going out of Egypt. The connection to this in the Mishnah is said in the day that Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah was picked to be the head of the Sanhedrin, of the high court. The Mistabel Omar, that it was logical to say that since the Rebbe Elazar ben Azariah, he was probably learning this, because they were learning Torah all the time, he was probably learning and delving into this idea in the Torah on the day that he was picked to be the head. So this must be connection to the whole idea of what the leader of the Jewish people was chosen to be the leader of the Jewish people, basically, of Israel. This is what leaders of the Jewish people, the Nasi, the leader of the Jewish people, should be occupied in. Like it says, Chiyuv Akdim Limud Torah, that you have to learn Torah and matters that are dealing with the time that we're in. Like it says, you're supposed to learn the laws of Passover 30 days before Passover, etc. So we can say that this was relevant because this is the head of the Jewish people to every single Jew. It's mentioned in the Torah. Everything mentioned in the Torah is relevant to every Jew. But especially here, this is the day that he was picked to be the leader of the Jews. And especially in learning the Torah in the time, and now this time. What's the connection of Rebbe Elazar ben Azariah and that he was 70 years old? And why 70 years old specifically? The Rebbe Elazar ben Azariah, he was the one that said that we have to talk about going out of Egypt, even in the nighttime, all of the days of your life. Let's just do the first paragraph. In this, it says an unusual thing. It says, going out of Egypt, that after the Jewish people went out of Egypt, there's an obligation that you must mention going out of Egypt all of the days of your life. Whether we're talking about in the daytime, but also in the nighttime, whether we're talking about in this world, whether we're talking about in the days of the Moshiach, that you should be occupied in going out of Egypt. The reason for this is because going out of Egypt is a very great foundation and the pillar which upholds the whole Torah and our faith. The essence of what Judaism is, a basic foundation of Judaism is going out of Egypt. First of all, that God exists. Second of all, that God is involved in the world. And third of all, that it's going to happen again. That's the foundation of the Torah and the faith of the Jewish people. As then, nifala petichat inyan Geula. Then there is the opening of this idea of Geula, namely the amazing change that occurred in the Jewish people in the whole world. That the Jewish people actually went from being slaves and they became free, essentially. And now we are also slaves, we don't realize it, and we're also going to go out to a different type of freedom. Avdayim, now the Jewish people are the servants of God. V'lo avidim la'avadim, and now we're not servants of servants, in other words, of the Egyptians. In a way which will be constant. Kol yamei chayecha, all of the days of your life, the Rebbe is going to say all of your days, all the time, chayecha, and all of your energy should be devoted to this idea of going out of Egypt, coming of Moshiach and taking out of Egypt. Now, as we're going to discuss more, God willing, tomorrow.